Brooklyn carried a different kind of silence during winter mornings. It was not peaceful silence. It was exhausted silence of people surviving paycheck to paycheck while pretending life might eventually improve. The old apartment building on Halston Avenue understood that silence better than anyone living inside it. The cracked brick walls carried years of arguments, unpaid rent notices, crying children, broken heaters, and exhausted dreams. Pipes rattled through the night like distant gunfire. Elevators stopped working whenever the weather became too cold. Mold spread slowly across ceilings while landlords ignored complaints for months. Yet despite everything, the tenants stayed because leaving New York required money none of them possessed. Isabella Hayes had lived there almost her entire life. Every morning began with exhaustion before the day even started. She balanced 2 jobs while caring for her younger brother Noah, whose worsening medical condition consumed nearly every dollar she earned. Sleep had become a luxury she no longer remembered clearly. Dark circles beneath her eyes remained hidden beneath careful makeup and forced smiles. Nobody inside the building realized how close Isabella stood to completely falling apart emotionally. At 26 years old, she already looked emotionally older than most people twice her age. The tiny apartment smelled faintly of medicine and burned coffee. Medical bills covered nearly every surface near the kitchen table. Noah sat wrapped in blankets near the window, weak from another sleepless night, while snow drifted outside across the broken streets below. The city looked beautiful from far away. Up close, it looked hungry. Isabella adjusted Noah's medication before rushing to prepare for work. Her body moved automatically through routines she repeated daily. Nothing about life felt stable anymore. Rent prices had increased again. Food costs kept rising. Rumors about the building being sold spread through every hallway like disease. Nobody knew who the new owner would be, but fear already lived inside the building before any official announcement arrived. Tenants whispered nervously beside mailboxes and stairwells. Elderly residents worried they would be forced onto the streets. Families quietly discussed moving into shelters if eviction notices appeared. People avoided eye contact whenever expensive black vehicles stopped outside the property. Then the security teams arrived. That was the moment fear became real. Men wearing dark suits appeared throughout the property days before ownership officially changed. They stood near entrances pretending to inspect structural damage while secretly watching residents. Their calm expressions carried something emotionally colder than ordinary business professionalism. They looked like men trained to hurt people quietly. Nobody challenged them. Nobody dared. Isabella first noticed them while returning from her late-night diner shift. One of the men stood beside the entrance, smoking silently, while snow collected across his shoulders. His eyes followed every tenant entering the building, like he was memorizing faces. The atmosphere inside Halston Avenue apartments changed immediately afterward. Maintenance workers suddenly repaired broken lights overnight. Security cameras appeared across hallways within hours. Expensive vehicles parked outside daily beside city officials and wealthy investors who never previously visited neighborhoods like this. The rich only came to Brooklyn when they wanted something, and whatever they wanted terrified everyone. 3 days later, residents received mandatory notices ordering them to attend an emergency ownership meeting in the lobby. Nobody slept peacefully the night before. The lobby overflowed with nervous tenants the following afternoon. Mothers held children close, while elderly residents whispered prayers beneath their breath. Cheap winter coats filled the room beside peeling wallpaper and flickering ceiling lights. Fear moved quietly through the crowd because poor people recognized danger faster than anyone else, especially when powerful men suddenly became interested in forgotten places. Then the black SUVs arrived. Conversation stopped instantly. The vehicles parked outside, like a funeral procession. Expensive engines purred softly beneath falling snow, while armed security exited first, scanning the street carefully. The entire building seemed to hold its breath. And then Luca Moretti stepped onto the sidewalk. Even people who had never seen him before recognized him immediately. Power carried its own atmosphere. Luca moved calmly through the entrance surrounded by armed men, but he did not behave loudly like most wealthy criminals. That made him more frightening. Expensive black gloves covered his hands, while his dark coat remained untouched by snow. His expression looked controlled, emotionless, almost disturbingly calm. Yet fear spread through the lobby the second he entered, because everyone in New York knew the name Luca Moretti, the billionaire businessman with political connections, the invisible king connected to half the city's construction projects, the dangerous man newspapers never openly accused despite bodies appearing around every major business deal connected to his empire. Whispers followed him everywhere. Mafia boss, murderer, monster. Isabella noticed older tenants immediately lowering their eyes when Luca walked past. Even city officials standing beside him suddenly looked nervous in his presence. The building manager nearly trembled while introducing him. That frightened Isabella more than anything else. Powerful people were afraid of him. Luca listened silently while investors discussed renovation plans, luxury redevelopment, increased property value, new tenant standards, professional restructuring. Every sentence sounded polite while secretly threatening hundreds of poor families with displacement. One wealthy developer openly mocked the residents during the presentation, describing the building as contaminated with low-class problems. Several investors laughed quietly. The humiliation spread across the room like poison. Isabella felt anger rising inside her chest, watching rich strangers discuss human lives like unwanted garbage. Her father spent years working construction across New York before dying under mysterious circumstances when she was 16. Since then, survival taught Isabella exactly how wealthy people viewed families like hers: disposable, invisible, worthless unless useful. She tried remaining unnoticed during the meeting until one elderly tenant began crying beside the staircase after hearing rumors about future rent increases. Isabella instinctively moved forward to help calm her. That was when Luca noticed her. The moment lasted only seconds. Yet something shifted emotionally inside the room afterward. Luca's attention settled on Isabella with unsettling focus, while she comforted the frightened woman. His expression remained unreadable, but several security men nearby suddenly exchanged nervous looks, like something unexpected had happened. Isabella immediately felt exposed beneath his gaze. Not admired, observed, studied. The tension became psychologically unbearable once Luca slowly approached her through the crowd. Conversations died instantly around them. Nobody dared interrupt him. Up close, he looked even more emotionally dangerous. His calmness felt unnatural. Most powerful men demanded attention loudly. Luca did not need to. Fear followed him automatically. Even his silence controlled people. Isabella forced herself not to step backward. Luca studied her carefully before briefly glancing toward Noah, standing weakly near the hallway entrance. Something unreadable flickered across his expression before disappearing again. Then he walked away without explanation. That should have comforted Isabella. Instead, it terrified her, because afterward, the security team started watching her specifically. Over the next week, strange things began happening throughout the building. Certain tenants suddenly disappeared after publicly arguing with management. Apartments became empty overnight without warning. Rumors spread about cash offers forcing families to leave quietly. Nobody knew whether those stories were true, but fear transformed the building into something emotionally suffocating. Even Noah noticed the changes. Security guards now stood near elevators 24 hours daily. New surveillance cameras covered every hallway. Expensive renovations began only on floors closest to Isabella's apartment, and Luca Moretti kept appearing unexpectedly. Sometimes Isabella spotted him speaking privately with politicians near the entrance. Other nights his black SUV remained parked outside for hours without explanation. Residents avoided looking directly at him whenever he visited, but Luca always noticed Isabella. Always. The realization slowly poisoned her sense of safety. One evening after finishing work, Isabella discovered someone had entered her apartment while she was gone. Nothing appeared stolen. Noah remained unharmed, yet several objects had clearly been moved, including an old photograph of her father. Fear settled deeply inside her chest afterward. That same night, she searched through boxes hidden beneath her bed, hoping to understand why Luca seemed interested in her specifically. Most belongings belonged to her father, Michael Hayes, who rarely discussed his past before dying during what police claimed was a construction accident. But Isabella never fully believed that story. Her father feared something before his death. She remembered that clearly. While searching through old documents, Isabella discovered employment papers connected to construction companies owned by Moretti Investments decades earlier. Her father once worked directly for businesses connected to Luca's family empire. The discovery left her emotionally frozen, because suddenly Luca's strange behavior toward her no longer felt random. Someone knocked softly on her apartment door moments later. Fear rushed through her instantly. Outside stood one of Luca's security men holding medicine for Noah alongside an envelope containing enough cash to cover several months of rent. No message accompanied the gift. No explanation. Only silent control. Isabella wanted to refuse the money immediately, but desperation made morality complicated. Noah needed treatment. Survival often forced poor people into impossible decisions controlled by wealthy strangers. That night, she barely slept. Rain hammered softly against windows while paranoia spread through every dark corner of the apartment. Around midnight, Isabella noticed movement outside near the manager's office downstairs. 2 security guards escorted another tenant away quietly through the rear exit. The family never returned. By morning, their apartment already stood empty. The building no longer felt like home. It felt like ownership. And somewhere above the city skyline, Luca Moretti watched everything unfold with terrifying patience. 2 days later, Isabella entered the building manager's office searching for maintenance records connected to missing tenants. The office stood empty during another chaotic investor meeting upstairs. She searched quickly through filing cabinets, overflowing with financial paperwork. Then she found a hidden photograph. Her breath stopped instantly. The picture showed her father standing beside a younger version of Luca Moretti's murdered brother outside a construction site, nearly 20 years earlier. Both men looked terrified, and written across the back in faded ink were 5 chilling words. He found out the truth. The photograph changed everything inside Isabella Hayes' mind. For days afterward, she could no longer walk through the apartment building without feeling watched by invisible eyes. Every hallway camera suddenly felt personal. Every security guard near the elevators looked less like protection and more like surveillance. Even the old walls of Halston Avenue apartments seemed to carry secrets hidden beneath decades of peeling paint and broken concrete. Her father had known Luca Moretti's murdered brother, not casually, not professionally. The fear visible in the photograph proved something far more dangerous connected them. And now Luca Moretti owned the entire building where Isabella lived. That realization poisoned every moment afterward. The renovations began almost immediately after the ownership transfer became official. Construction crews flooded the property day and night. Luxury marble replaced cracked lobby floors. Modern security systems appeared on every level. Fingerprint scanners controlled stairwell access. New steel doors separated certain hallways from the rest of the building. The property no longer resembled low-income housing. It resembled controlled territory. Tenants whispered nervously that the building was becoming a fortress. Others described it more honestly, a prison. Residents quickly realized nobody entered or left without Luca knowing about it. Security guards tracked deliveries. Cameras monitored laundry rooms, elevators, and rooftop access 24 hours daily. Several families moved out voluntarily after complaining about surveillance, but most remained trapped financially. People too poor to leave often became prisoners without realizing it immediately. Isabella felt that truth deeply every time she walked through the lobby beneath the cold gaze of armed security teams. Noah noticed it too. The young boy rarely complained despite his worsening health, but even he stopped wandering through the building alone. Fear changed him emotionally. He no longer trusted the hallways where he once played with neighborhood children. Those children had disappeared anyway. Many families vanished quietly during the first month of Luca's ownership. Their apartments emptied overnight before expensive renovations transformed the spaces into luxury units for wealthy residents moving into Brooklyn from Manhattan. The new tenants behaved differently. Cold, judgmental, superior. They walked past long-time residents like invisible obstacles contaminating the building atmosphere. Wealthy couples openly complained about undesirable people remaining on lower floors. One woman insulted Isabella directly inside the elevator after noticing Noah's medical equipment. The humiliation burned silently inside her chest. But fear kept most residents quiet, because everyone understood Luca Moretti controlled everything now, and nobody wanted his attention. Unfortunately, Isabella already had it. She first realized the situation had become dangerous when two security guards stopped her outside the building late one evening after work. Their behavior remained polite, but emotionally unsettling. They informed her certain protective measures were now necessary because of potential threats connected to recent tensions surrounding the property. Protective oversight. That was the phrase they used. It sounded harmless. It was not. After that night, Isabella noticed guards following her through the neighborhood. Vehicles remained parked outside her workplace until shifts ended. Strangers watched her apartment windows from nearby rooftops. Someone had decided she required protection or containment. The difference became increasingly difficult to understand. Luca himself remained emotionally impossible to read. Weeks passed before Isabella encountered him directly again. During that time, rumors surrounding his empire spread constantly through the building. Stories about murdered rivals, corrupt politicians, construction deals tied to disappearances across New York, and always the same whispered detail about Luca's younger brother, murdered years earlier under mysterious circumstances nobody dared discuss openly. Some residents claimed Luca became emotionally colder after the death. Others insisted the murder transformed him into something psychologically dangerous beyond ordinary violence. Isabella started believing both stories might be true. One snowy evening, the power briefly failed throughout several floors during another renovation project. Emergency lights bathed the hallways in dark red shadows, while frightened residents gathered near stairwells. That was when Isabella accidentally reached the restricted upper floors. A service elevator malfunctioned during the outage, carrying her far above the tenant levels into sections of the building still hidden from public access. The doors opened onto complete silence. Luxury surrounded everything. Black marble floors reflected dim golden lights. Expensive artwork lined the walls beside armed guards stationed near reinforced doors. The atmosphere felt emotionally sterile, controlled with frightening precision. Luca's private penthouse occupied the entire upper section, and several powerful men were already there. Isabella immediately recognized two city officials from television, standing near the entrance beside wealthy investors and political donors. Their nervous expressions contrasted sharply against Luca's calm presence near the massive windows overlooking Manhattan. The meeting stopped the moment Isabella stepped from the elevator. Silence spread instantly. Several guards reached for concealed weapons. Luca simply watched her. No anger appeared on his face. That somehow felt worse. One politician muttered something disgusted about people from downstairs wandering into restricted areas. Another laughed quietly while criticizing the building's low-class contamination problem. The class hatred inside wealthy circles no longer surprised Isabella, but Luca's reaction did. Without raising his voice, he ordered everyone else to leave the room. Nobody argued. Even powerful politicians obeyed immediately. That frightened Isabella more than open violence ever could. Once they were alone, Luca approached slowly through the dim penthouse lighting. Snow drifted outside behind him across the New York skyline. He looked less like a businessman and more like someone carrying years of buried emotional exhaustion. Yet danger remained visible in every controlled movement. Isabella demanded answers about the photograph connected to her father and Luca's dead brother. Luca stayed silent for several moments before finally admitting her father once worked closely with his family years earlier. Construction operations, financial records, political projects tied to the Moretti Empire before corruption poisoned everything from inside. He never fully explained what happened afterward, but pain briefly surfaced inside his expression when discussing his brother. That moment changed Isabella emotionally, because monsters were not supposed to look heartbroken. Luca eventually escorted her personally back downstairs, but afterward the surveillance around Isabella intensified dramatically. Additional guards appeared near her apartment floor. New cameras faced directly toward her hallway. Certain maintenance workers suddenly avoided eye contact whenever she approached. Fear spread quietly through the building community. People knew Isabella had become important somehow, and importance near powerful criminals often ended badly. Then Vanessa DeMarco arrived. She entered the building like expensive perfume hiding poison beneath elegance. Beautiful, wealthy, and emotionally manipulative, Vanessa carried herself with the confidence of someone deeply connected to Luca's inner world. Rumors immediately followed her through every hallway. Former lover, political fixer, dangerous socialite. Nobody seemed completely certain. But Isabella recognized hatred instantly the first time Vanessa looked at her. The wealthy woman openly mocked Isabella's clothing, apartment floor, and working-class background during a gathering near the renovated lobby cafe. Several wealthy residents joined the humiliation eagerly. Vanessa described people like Isabella as temporary problems, standing in the way of progress. Disposable tenants, poor families, broken neighborhoods. The insults were designed to emotionally destroy her publicly. Instead, they revealed something important. Vanessa felt threatened. That realization stayed with Isabella afterward. Meanwhile, strange events inside the building grew increasingly disturbing. Certain hallways became permanently locked. Deliveries arrived during early morning hours under armed supervision. Maintenance teams renovated hidden basement, levels nobody previously accessed, and residents continued disappearing. One elderly man vanished after complaining loudly about surveillance cameras inside his apartment. Another family suddenly relocated after receiving mysterious cash payments. Fear transformed neighbors into silent strangers, avoiding unnecessary conversations. The building itself no longer felt alive. It felt controlled. One night, Isabella followed several maintenance workers through a restricted basement entrance after noticing unusual activity near freight elevators. Hidden corridors stretched beneath the property farther than she expected. Old storage rooms had been converted into private offices filled with financial records and surveillance equipment. What she discovered there emotionally shattered her. Folders containing financial transactions connected wealthy politicians, trafficking operations, construction companies, and offshore accounts throughout New York. Certain documents included photographs of missing women, alongside transportation schedules and property ownership records. The Moretti Empire extended far beyond real estate. Human lives had become business assets. Before Isabella could investigate further, footsteps approached from behind. Luca stood silently inside the doorway, watching her. For several terrifying seconds, neither spoke. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of threatening her, Luca closed the office door and admitted she deserved to understand the truth. He explained parts of the trafficking network had existed long before he inherited control of the empire. Politicians, judges, businessmen, and rival organizations all profited from the system. His younger brother discovered evidence years earlier and tried exposing the operation internally. Days later, he was murdered. Luca believed someone inside his own empire betrayed him, and now Isabella's father appeared connected somehow. The confession changed everything emotionally between them. For the first time, Isabella saw exhaustion beneath Luca's cold exterior. Years of paranoia, betrayal, grief, rage carefully hidden beneath absolute emotional control. She should have feared him more afterward. Instead, she began understanding him. That frightened her most of all, because emotional attachment inside dangerous worlds often destroyed people completely. Over the following weeks, Luca quietly started trusting Isabella with sensitive information connected to financial investigations and corrupt political figures. Security teams noticed the growing connection immediately. So did Vanessa. And paranoia spread through the building faster than ever. Residents whispered about hidden wars inside Luca's empire. Armed guards doubled throughout the property. Rival criminal organizations reportedly questioned why a poor tenant suddenly mattered so much to the most feared man in Brooklyn. Nobody understood Isabella herself no longer knew whether she was being protected or trapped. Then one stormy night, everything changed again. While reviewing old surveillance archives hidden inside the basement offices, Isabella discovered restricted footage recorded nearly 15 years earlier. The grainy video showed her father entering a private parking garage beneath one of Luca's construction properties. Waiting for him, there was Luca's younger brother. Both men looked terrified. And according to the timestamp, the meeting happened only hours before Luca's brother was murdered. The surveillance footage destroyed the last illusion Isabella Hayes still cared about her father. For years, She remembered him as an exhausted construction worker who died after becoming trapped beneath financial pressure and dangerous debts. Her childhood memories painted him as quiet, loving, and broken by life inside Brooklyn's unforgiving streets. But the footage hidden beneath Luca Moretti's building showed something entirely different. Her father had not been an ordinary man. He had been standing beside Luca's younger brother only hours before the murder that changed the Moretti empire forever. And both men looked terrified. That truth followed Isabella everywhere afterward. Sleep became impossible inside the heavily monitored apartment building. Every hallway camera now felt connected to her father somehow. Every armed guard stationed near elevators reminded her that secrets powerful enough to kill people were buried beneath the building itself. The atmosphere across the property grew darker each day. Construction continued constantly, but the expensive renovations no longer distracted residents from the fear spreading quietly among them. Wealthy investors occupied upper luxury floors, while longtime tenants remained trapped beneath layers of surveillance and intimidation. The building had transformed into a controlled ecosystem. Above ground, rich elites drank expensive wine beside politicians and celebrity investors. Below them, ordinary families lived under invisible pressure they barely understood. And somewhere between those two worlds stood Luca Moretti, a man feared by the city, yet hunted by something far more dangerous than rival criminals. Isabella slowly began understanding that truth after discovering hidden financial records buried inside Luca's underground offices. The documents connected senators, judges, developers, and police commissioners to trafficking operations operating across New York, Chicago, and Miami. Young women disappeared through shell corporations disguised as housing programs and overseas employment agencies. Political figures received payments through fake charities and construction projects tied directly to Moretti-owned businesses. The criminal empire stretched deeper than organized crime. It infected government itself. One line inside the files emotionally haunted Isabella more than anything else. Human cargo relocation expenses. The phrase appeared beside photographs of missing women. That moment changed her understanding of Luca forever. She had entered the building believing he controlled the darkness surrounding the empire. Now she realized the empire itself had existed long before Luca inherited it, and it was still consuming people from the inside. Several nights later, Isabella witnessed Luca's brutality personally for the first time. A traitor inside the organization had attempted leaking financial records to rival families. Security teams dragged a man into one of the underground maintenance rooms beneath the property, while terrified staff avoided eye contact throughout the hallways. Word spread quickly through the building community. Nobody spoke openly, but everyone knew punishment was coming. Isabella accidentally saw a part of it while delivering medication upstairs for Noah after another late hospital appointment. The screams echoing through the basement corridors sounded less human than animal. Luca emerged from the underground level nearly an hour later, wearing the same calm expression he always carried publicly. Yet blood stained the cuffs of his black coat. No visible emotion appeared on his face. That frightened Isabella more than violence itself, because she finally understood why powerful people feared him so deeply. Luca did not lose control emotionally when hurting people. He remained perfectly controlled. Afterward, the traitor vanished completely. No body, no police investigation, no explanation. The silence surrounding disappearances inside the building became psychologically suffocating. Meanwhile, rumors about rival mafia organizations intensified across New York. Several criminal families blamed Luca for exposing financial operations connected to politicians and trafficking networks. Others believe he planned dismantling certain empire structures entirely after his brother's death. Paranoia infected everyone around him. Security checkpoints doubled throughout the building. Armed guards searched maintenance tunnels hourly. Even wealthy tenants started leaving quietly after noticing federal vehicles parked near nearby intersections during nighttime hours. Fear had become part of daily life. And then Damian Cross entered the situation. Isabella first saw him during a late-night meeting inside the penthouse conference room overlooking Manhattan. Unlike the corrupt politicians constantly visiting Luca's property, Damian carried himself differently. Controlled, observant, dangerously intelligent. Officially, Damian Cross worked as a federal investigator connected to organized crime task forces. Unofficially, nobody seemed certain whose side he truly served. Luca clearly distrusted him, yet he still allowed Damian inside the building. That contradiction disturbed Isabella immediately. During the following weeks, Damian appeared frequently around the property. Sometimes he met privately with Luca. Other times he spoke quietly with politicians or wealthy investors inside restricted offices. And always he watched Isabella carefully, not with attraction, with calculation, as though evaluating how dangerous she might become. One evening, Isabella overheard part of a conversation between Damian and a city official near the underground parking garage. The official worried publicly about trafficking investigations reaching national media coverage. Damian's response emotionally unsettled her. He claimed corruption only became dangerous when the wrong people controlled the information, not when innocent people suffered. That sentence revealed everything about him. Damian Cross did not care about justice. He cared about power. The realization frightened Isabella deeply because it meant federal investigations themselves might already be compromised from inside. Luca seemed to understand that truth better than anyone. For the first time since entering his world, Isabella started noticing emotional exhaustion hidden beneath his controlled personality. Some nights he remained awake until sunrise reviewing old financial records connected to his brother's death. Other nights he wandered the upper penthouse alone, staring across Brooklyn like a man carrying unbearable psychological weight. One storm-filled evening, Isabella discovered him inside a locked office surrounded by photographs and evidence boards connected to trafficking victims. Young women, missing children, corrupt politicians, dead witnesses. At the center of everything stood one photograph of Luca's younger brother. The emotional pain inside Luca's eyes when looking at that image changed something inside Isabella permanently. Because monsters were not supposed to grieve like that. He never directly explained the full story. But Isabella slowly pieced fragments together from scattered documents and overheard conversations. Luca's younger brother had discovered evidence proving several elite political figures used Moretti-controlled businesses to traffic vulnerable women through construction contracts and housing relocation programs. When he threatened exposing the network internally, someone ordered his murder, and afterward, powerful people blamed rival organizations to hide the truth. The betrayal destroyed Luca emotionally. Since then, he trusted almost nobody, including himself. That understanding complicated Isabella's fear toward him. She still recognized the violence surrounding his empire. Innocent people continued suffering because of the criminal world Luca controlled. But another truth now existed beside that fear. He was also trying to destroy something much larger than himself. And that mission was slowly destroying him too. Meanwhile, Vanessa DeMarco intensified her manipulation publicly. She spread rumors throughout elite social circles claiming Isabella slept with Luca for protection and financial benefits. Wealthy residents mocked Isabella openly whenever she entered renovated sections of the building. One woman cruelly insulted Noah's illness during a fundraising event hosted inside the penthouse ballroom. The humiliation burned deeply, especially because Luca witnessed it. Everyone expected violence. Instead, Luca quietly ordered every guest involved removed permanently from the building and blacklisted from future business operations connected to Moretti properties. The punishment happened calmly, without shouting, without threats, and somehow that made it more terrifying. Isabella noticed something emotionally dangerous afterward. She no longer feared Luca the way she once had. Trust had begun growing silently between them, not romantic trust. Something heavier, the kind formed between damaged people surviving inside the same collapsing world. That connection frightened Isabella more than hatred ever could, because emotional attachment to dangerous men rarely ended safely. At the same time, surveillance throughout the building increased dramatically. Hidden microphones appeared inside maintenance corridors. Security teams followed Isabella even during hospital visits with Noah. Several residents claimed federal agents questioned them about Luca's operation secretly. The building no longer felt like housing. It felt like a battlefield preparing for war. Then Isabella discovered the financial archive hidden beneath the old boiler rooms. The records connected her father directly to investigations involving trafficking operations years earlier. Payment transfers, coded communication, construction permits, and witness protection requests filled dozens of locked files. Her father had not worked for the Moretti Empire willingly near the end. He had been trying to expose it. That realization emotionally shattered Isabella, because it meant his death likely had nothing to do with ordinary criminal violence. Someone powerful silenced him deliberately, and Luca might not have known. While reviewing the files, Isabella uncovered another terrifying truth. Several federal agents investigating the trafficking network had disappeared years earlier after meeting with Damian Cross privately. Damian was manipulating both law enforcement and organized crime simultaneously. The corruption reached everywhere. Police, politics, business, federal agencies. Nobody could be trusted completely anymore, not even Luca's own organization. That paranoia spread rapidly throughout the building after another suspected traitor disappeared during a security sweep. Armed guards searched apartments overnight. Residents remained trapped inside during lockdown procedures lasting nearly 12 hours. Fear transformed neighbors into strangers again. Nobody knew who might secretly work against Luca, or against them. Late one night, Isabella returned to the underground archive rooms, searching for additional evidence connected to her father. That was when she found the recording. Hidden inside an old maintenance locker behind stacks of construction permits sat a damaged digital recorder labeled only with a faded date from years earlier. Her hands shook while pressing play. Static filled the room first. Then voices emerged slowly. Men discussing payments, political protection, construction contracts. And finally, one sentence that stopped Isabella's breathing completely. A voice ordered her father's disappearance after he threatened exposing the trafficking network tied to Luca's empire. Worse still, the speaker sounded horrifyingly familiar. Someone inside Luca Moretti's inner circle had signed her father's death warrant years earlier. The recording changed everything inside Luca Moretti's empire. Before Isabella Hayes discovered the truth about her father's disappearance, she had only been another frightened tenant trapped inside a dangerous building owned by powerful men. After the recording, she became something far worse, a threat. And in New York's criminal world, threats never survive for long. The shift happened almost immediately. Within days, unfamiliar vehicles began parking outside the apartment complex at strange hours. Armed men wearing expensive suits watched the entrances from black sedans while pretending to read newspapers or speak through Bluetooth earpieces. Residents noticed the tension instantly. Conversations stopped whenever elevators opened. Families rushed their children indoors before sunset. Longtime tenants quietly packed belongings and disappeared overnight without informing neighbors. Fear spread faster than truth. The building itself no longer resembled ordinary housing. Security checkpoints stood beside lobby entrances. Surveillance cameras rotated constantly across hallways and stairwells. Armed guards occupied every floor near Isabella's apartment. Nobody said her name publicly anymore, but everyone understood the reason. Luca Moretti was protecting her personally. That single fact turned Isabella into the most dangerous woman in Brooklyn. The psychological pressure became unbearable quickly. News outlets suddenly began publishing stories accusing Luca's properties of financial corruption, trafficking ties, and illegal tenant intimidation. Television commentators demanded federal intervention, while politicians publicly condemned organized crime connections spreading through New York real estate. But Isabella noticed something disturbing. The reports never mentioned trafficking victims, never mentioned missing women, never mentioned innocent families destroyed by political corruption. Instead, media networks focus entirely on property values, wealthy investors, and damaged city reputations. Even public outrage had become controlled. Damian Cross understood how to manipulate perception perfectly. That realization haunted Isabella whenever she watched television coverage inside her apartment late at night beside Noah's medical equipment. Powerful people were not trying to stop corruption. They were trying to control who benefited from it. Meanwhile, Vanessa DeMarco intensified her attacks publicly. She hosted elite social gatherings inside newly renovated penthouse sections of the building, inviting wealthy investors, politicians, and celebrity donors connected to Luca's business operations. Isabella occasionally crossed paths with them while returning from hospital visits with Noah. The humiliation became increasingly cruel. Women wearing designer dresses whispered insults loudly enough for Isabella to hear. Some mocked her clothing. Others ridiculed her working-class background openly. One wealthy investor's wife referred to Isabella as the building's charity project. Another implied Luca kept her nearby for entertainment. The hidden racism and class hatred poisoned every interaction. To them, Isabella represented something offensive. A poor woman gaining protection powerful elites believed belonged only to people like themselves. The emotional damage slowly accumulated inside her. She stopped leaving the apartment unless absolutely necessary. Sleep disappeared beneath constant anxiety. Every hallway noise sounded dangerous. Every elevator ding made her heart race violently. Worst of all, Noah began noticing her fear. That destroyed her emotionally. One evening, after another exhausting hospital appointment, Isabella returned home to discover flowers waiting outside her apartment door. No card, no explanation, just white roses wrapped carefully in black ribbon. At first, she assumed Luca sent them. Then she noticed a blood stain across one petal. Hidden beneath the flowers rested a small bullet casing. Her hand started shaking immediately. The message was unmistakable. They knew where she lived. They knew where Noah slept. And they were getting closer. When Luca discovered the threat later that night, something inside him changed visibly. For the first time since Isabella met him, his emotional control cracked publicly. The atmosphere across the building shifted instantly afterward. Security teams doubled overnight. Armed guards searched every maintenance floor repeatedly. Deliveries stopped entering without armed inspection. Entire sections of the apartment complex entered lockdown procedures. Fear infected everyone. Even Luca's own men appeared nervous now, because rival mafia organizations had crossed an invisible line. Threatening Isabella directly meant challenging Luca personally, and nobody understood how far he might go in response. Several days later, Luca attended a private summit meeting involving New York's most powerful criminal leaders inside a heavily guarded financial tower in Manhattan. The meeting was supposed to stabilize tensions between rival organizations after recent media exposure and federal investigations. Instead, it became psychological warfare. Isabella only learned details afterward through overheard conversations among security staff returning to the building. Rival leaders openly questioned Luca's judgment. Some accused him of destroying decades of criminal stability because of emotional attachment toward a tenant from Brooklyn. Others demanded Isabella be handed over publicly to prevent further investigations. One elderly mafia leader reportedly called her a disposable girl from a disposable building. That sentence spread quickly through Luca's organization. Hours later, the same leader's private nightclub burned to ground under suspicious circumstances. No survivors were found inside. Nobody publicly blamed Luca. Nobody needed to. After that, fear surrounding him deepened across New York. But so did paranoia inside his own empire. Isabella noticed it everywhere. Security guards whispering nervously. Executives disappearing suddenly after late-night meetings. Residents being questioned aggressively about strangers entering the building. Someone inside Luca's organization was leaking information constantly, and everyone suspected everyone else. The emotional pressure slowly pushed Isabella toward collapse. She could no longer separate truth from manipulation. Vanessa continued spreading rumors through elite circles claiming Isabella secretly worked with federal investigators against Luca. At the same time, anonymous messages appeared beneath her apartment door warning her to leave Brooklyn immediately before the empire buried her beside her father. Even ordinary residents started avoiding her. Parents pulled children away whenever she entered elevators. Neighbors who once smiled politely now looked terrified speaking near her apartment. She had become cursed inside the building, and Luca's protection only made it worse. Yet despite everything, emotional trust between them deepened quietly, not through conversations, through silence, through survival. Luca began spending more time near Isabella's apartment after midnight security sweeps. Sometimes she found groceries delivered anonymously after exhausting hospital visits. Other times, additional medical supplies appeared for Noah without explanation. He never mentioned those gestures publicly, but Isabella always knew. One storm-filled evening, the building temporarily lost power during severe rainfall across Brooklyn. Emergency generators activated slowly while darkness consumed entire hallways. Most residents panicked immediately. Inside the confusion, Isabella became trapped briefly inside a maintenance corridor while returning from the pharmacy downstairs. That was when armed men entered the floor. 3 strangers, professional, silent, searching apartments methodically. Isabella hid behind exposed pipes while terror froze her completely. The men carried suppressed weapons, and one of them held her photograph. Before they reached her hiding place, gunfire suddenly exploded to the corridor. Luca's security teams intercepted the attackers violently. The firefight lasted less than a minute, but afterward, blood covered the hallway floors. One assassin survived long enough to whisper something horrifying before dying. The order came from inside the Moretti organization itself. That truth spread panic through the building overnight. If betrayal existed inside Luca's inner circle, nowhere remained safe anymore. Luca responded brutally. Several longtime associates vanished during internal investigations. Entire security divisions were replaced within 48 hours. Surveillance expanded into every apartment hallway and underground maintenance area. The building transformed into a military fortress. Yet, somehow Isabella felt less protected than ever, because Luca himself now looked emotionally exhausted. The betrayals surrounding him were becoming personal. One night, Isabella accidentally witnessed him alone inside the underground archive rooms, staring silently at old photographs of his younger brother. The emotional grief hidden beneath his controlled personality finally became visible completely. For years, he had carried the empire like armor. Now the armor was cracking, and Isabella understood why. Power had not protected the people he loved. It had destroyed them. That realization changed something fundamental between them afterward. The fear remained, but emotional distance began disappearing slowly. One particularly difficult evening, Noah's health worsened suddenly during another violent thunderstorm sweeping across Brooklyn. Ambulances struggled reaching the building because rival protesters and media vehicles crowded nearby streets after fresh corruption leaks connected to Damian Cross surfaced nationally. Isabella emotionally broke completely that night. Exhaustion, fear, grief, pressure, everything collapsed together. She sat alone beside Noah's hospital bed inside the apartment, while rain hammered violently against windows overlooking the city. And for the first time since entering Luca's world, she cried openly, not quietly, not carefully, completely. Luca arrived sometime after midnight without warning. He said nothing initially. He simply stood near the doorway, watching the emotional devastation consume her. That silence mattered more than comfort ever could, because Isabella finally understood something terrifying. Luca recognized her pain because he carried the same darkness himself. 2 damaged people trapped inside collapsing worlds. That emotional intimacy became dangerous quickly, especially in an empire built on fear and violence. Meanwhile, rival organizations secretly prepared coordinated attacks across multiple Moretti properties throughout New York. Federal investigations intensified publicly, while Damian Cross positioned himself politically as the face of anti-corruption reform. But privately, he manipulated both sides carefully. The deeper chaos spread, the more powerful Damian became, and Isabella unknowingly stood at the center of everything. Late one night, Vanessa hosted another elite gathering inside the penthouse ballroom above the building. Politicians, developers, and wealthy investors attended, while pretending the city itself was not spiraling toward criminal war. Isabella avoided the event entirely, but rumors reached her apartment anyway. Vanessa publicly accused Isabella of emotionally weakening Luca and destabilizing the empire. Several rival investors openly demanded Luca remove her from the building permanently before more violence erupted. Hours later, one of those investors disappeared after leaving the party. Again, nobody asked questions. Fear ruled everything now. And then came the storm. Rain crashed violently across Brooklyn near midnight, while thunder shook the apartment complex repeatedly. Most residents remained trapped indoors beneath emergency lockdown procedures after another assassination threat surfaced earlier that evening. Isabella sat near Noah's bed, trying desperately to calm her thoughts, while lightning illuminated the city skyline outside. The atmosphere felt wrong. Too quiet, too heavy. Then she noticed movement across the neighboring rooftop. A shadow, still, watching her apartment window, before realization fully reached her. The sniper bullet exploded through the glass beside Isabella's head as thunder shook the entire building simultaneously. The sniper attack changed the atmosphere inside Luca Moretti's empire permanently. After the bullet shattered Isabella Hayes' apartment window, fear stopped hiding quietly beneath the building's polished luxury image. Now it lived openly in every hallway. Residents barely slept anymore. Armed guards patrolled every floor continuously. Delivery workers disappeared after routine inspections. Elevators required biometric authorization after sunset. The building no longer resembled an apartment complex. It resembled a fortress waiting for war. And despite all the security surrounding her, Isabella understood one terrifying truth more clearly than ever before. Someone powerful wanted her dead badly enough to destroy Luca Moretti publicly in the process. That realization haunted her constantly during the following weeks. Meanwhile, media pressure surrounding Luca intensified nationwide. News outlets released leaked financial reports tying politicians, judges, and wealthy investors to Moretti-controlled businesses. Federal investigations expanded across New York, while public outrage spread rapidly through social media and political broadcasts. But behind the scenes, another battle was already unfolding. The criminal empire itself was beginning to fracture. Rival mafia organizations blamed Luca for attracting unwanted federal attention. Investors quietly withdrew financial support. Political allies started distancing themselves publicly from anyone connected to the Moretti network. Fear spread faster than loyalty, and Isabella unknowingly stood at the center of everything collapsing. The rooftop charity gala was supposed to stabilize the situation, at least publicly. Vanessa DeMarco organized the event personally after convincing political elites and wealthy investors that Lucas still maintained control over his empire. The gathering took place atop the renovated apartment building beneath glowing Manhattan skylines and expensive crystal lighting. Everything about the evening screamed power. Luxury tables lined the rooftop terrace beside enormous glass walls overlooking Brooklyn. Wealthy donors drank champagne while classical musicians performed softly near rooftop gardens redesigned only weeks earlier. To outsiders, it appeared elegant. To Isabella, it felt like watching wealthy predators hide inside expensive clothing. She almost refused attending entirely, but Luca insisted, not forcefully, quietly, that somehow unsettled her more. When Isabella finally stepped onto the rooftop that evening wearing a dark silver gown chosen by Vanessa's stylist, the atmosphere shifted immediately. Conversation slowed. Political figures stared openly. Wealthy investors whispered among themselves behind fake smiles. The class hatred remained impossible to hide. Some guests still viewed Isabella as nothing more than a poor tenant pretending to belong beside powerful elites. Others feared her because Luca Moretti protected her publicly now. Both reactions made her dangerous. The rooftop itself carried symbolic weight she recognized immediately. Months earlier, she first encountered Luca during a chaotic tenant meeting inside the same building after ownership transferred secretly through shell corporations. Back then she feared eviction. Now she stood beside the man capable of destroying governments. The emotional contrast unsettled her deeply. Security teams surrounded every entrance discreetly, while hidden cameras monitored guests continuously from rooftop corners. Isabella noticed armed guards stationed near ventilation systems and maintenance exits disguised as catering staff. Even celebration had become militarized because everyone expected violence eventually. The tension worsened when Damian Cross arrived unexpectedly. Unlike the politicians pretending confidence or investors hiding fear behind expensive laughter, Damian appeared completely calm. That frightened Isabella more than anyone else there. He moved easily between federal officials and criminal financiers without belonging fully to either side. One moment he discussed anti-corruption reform publicly beside senators. The next, He exchanged private nods with known Moretti associates near the rooftop bar. Damien manipulated worlds away ordinary people, manipulated conversations. And Isabella slowly realized something horrifying. The chaos consuming Luca's empire benefited Damien politically. Every leaked scandal increased his influence. Every violent incident strengthened his public image. He did not want peace. He wanted controlled destruction. Vanessa quietly accelerated the psychological warfare throughout the evening. She floated elegantly through groups of wealthy elites, spreading carefully crafted rumors about Isabella and Luca. Some whispers suggested Isabella secretly worked with federal investigators. Others implied Luca had become emotionally unstable because of his obsession with protecting her. The damage spread instantly. Several rival investors refused meeting Luca privately afterward. A powerful city official abruptly canceled partnership agreements connected to Moretti-owned properties. Fear infected the rooftop gathering like poison beneath expensive perfume and soft music. And Luca noticed all of it. For the first time since Isabella met him, she saw something unfamiliar inside his expression. Not anger. Fear. Not fear for himself. Fear of losing control. That realization changed her emotionally, because powerful men like Luca Moretti were never supposed to appear vulnerable. Yet throughout the evening, Isabella caught subtle signs repeatedly, his hands tightening slightly during political negotiations, his eyes scanning exits more often than usual, the visible exhaustion hidden beneath his controlled appearance. The empire surrounding him was collapsing slowly, and he understood it better than anyone. That emotional vulnerability pulled Isabella closer to him, psychologically despite everything she feared about his world. As the gala continued, tension spread across the rooftop more aggressively. Rival Mafia leaders arrived late alongside heavily armed security details disguised as private bodyguards. Wealthy investors positioned themselves strategically near exits. Politicians avoided discussing federal investigations openly, while secretly checking phones for updates involving leaked corruption files spreading online nationally. Everyone sensed disaster approaching. Nobody knew from where. Then the music changed. A slower orchestral performance echoed softly across the rooftop, while city lights reflected against surrounding glass towers. That was when Luke approached Isabella publicly. The rooftop fell strangely quiet watching him cross the terrace. Even rival criminals paused conversations, because everyone understood what this moment represented. Powerful men like Luca Moretti never displayed emotional attachment openly. Doing so created weakness. Yet he stopped directly beside Isabella, without hesitation, and then he placed his hand against hers. The reaction across the rooftop became immediate. Fear, shock, calculation. Every criminal leader watching understood the same terrifying truth simultaneously. Luca Moretti was emotionally compromised. Without speaking, he guided Isabella toward the rooftop balcony overlooking Brooklyn's glowing skyline. The symbolic weight of the moment spread through the gathering instantly. It resembled a dance without music, a public declaration without words. And psychologically, it shattered the illusion that Luca still ruled through pure emotional control alone. Standing beside the balcony rail, Isabella felt the emotional tension surrounding him more clearly than ever before. The city lights reflected across his expression, while helicopters circled distantly above Manhattan. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence itself carried intimacy, because beneath the violence, surveillance, corruption, and fear consuming their lives, something dangerously human had formed between them. Trust, not complete trust, but enough to weaken both of them emotionally. That made the moment catastrophic. Across the rooftop, rival leaders watched carefully, while Vanessa quietly manipulated conversations behind them. Damian Cross observed everything from near the champagne tables beside federal associates, pretending not to monitor Luca openly. The entire empire balanced on perception, and perception was shifting rapidly. Then Isabella noticed something strange. Several rooftop security cameras stopped moving simultaneously. At first, she assumed it meant nothing, but seconds later, one of Luca's guards touched his earpiece, suddenly with visible panic spreading across his face. Another security officer disappeared behind maintenance access doors without explanation. The atmosphere changed instantly. Luca noticed too. His expression hardened immediately while scanning the rooftop perimeter. Someone had compromised the security system internally, and judging from the fear spreading among his guards, the breach was massive. Meanwhile, hidden weapons slowly appeared throughout the gala. A rival bodyguard adjusted his jacket, revealing a handgun beneath tailored fabric. Another guest quietly moved women away from certain exits while pretending concern about weather conditions. The rooftop transformed into a battlefield without a single shot fired yet. Psychological warfare had become physical. Then the leaks began. Large digital screens surrounding the rooftop suddenly flickered unexpectedly before displaying classified financial documents tied to senators, judges, and political donors connected to trafficking operations across multiple states. The reaction was immediate chaos. Guests panicked. Politicians shouted desperately. Investors rushed toward exits while security teams scrambled unsuccessfully to disable the screens. Damian Cross stood perfectly calm watching the destruction unfold. That was when Isabella finally understood. This entire gala had become a trap, not just for Luca, for everyone. The corruption networks hidden for decades were collapsing publicly in real time, and someone wanted every powerful figure trapped together when it happened. Fear spread violently across the rooftop afterward. Several Mafia leaders accused Luca directly of orchestrating the exposure. Others demanded immediate evacuation before federal raids reached the building. But evacuation suddenly became impossible because every elevator inside the tower had stopped functioning simultaneously. Security communications failed next. Then rooftop lights flickered repeatedly as emergency backup systems activated throughout the building beneath them. Panic intensified immediately. Guests rushed toward exits only to discover armed guards blocking access routes unpredictably. Nobody understood who controlled the situation anymore. Even Luca's organization appeared fractured internally. The emotional pressure became unbearable. Yet amid the chaos, Isabella noticed something else. Luca kept positioning himself between her and potential threats instinctively. Every movement, every glance, every calculated decision. He protected her even while his empire collapsed around him. That realization terrified her emotionally, because powerful men destroyed entire worlds over weaknesses like that. Vanessa finally approached her in confusion, her calm smile masking visible satisfaction. Without openly threatening Isabella, she quietly implied the rooftop disaster could have been avoided entirely if Luca had removed emotional distractions from his empire sooner. The message was unmistakable. Vanessa blamed Isabella for everything, and deep down, part of Isabella feared she might be right. Moments later, gunfire echoed faintly from lower building floors. The rooftop froze. Then another burst followed, closer this time. Screams erupted instantly across the gathering. Armed men were moving through the tower, and they were killing people. Luca's remaining guards formed defensive positions immediately, while rival Mafia leaders drew concealed weapons openly now. The illusion of peace shattered completely. The empire was finally falling apart. Then came the final betrayal. One of Luca's own security commanders suddenly aimed his weapon directly toward him from across the rooftop. Several other guards followed. Traitors hidden inside the organization revealed themselves simultaneously. Isabella felt terror crash through her chest as Luca slowly stepped in front of her protectively. Below them, emergency sirens echoed throughout Brooklyn. Above them, helicopters circled closer through dark clouds gathering over Manhattan. And around them, armed enemies surrounded the rooftop completely. Then every rooftop exit locked automatically with a deafening metallic slam as dozens of armed men emerged from stairwells and maintenance doors surrounding the entire building. By sunrise, the apartment hallways were covered in blood, and Isabella Hayes finally understood why nobody survived loving a mafia king. The rooftop attack shattered the building's illusion of safety within seconds. Gunfire exploded across the terrace immediately after the exits locked automatically. Wealthy investors dropped beneath tables, while politicians abandoned all dignity, trying to escape through sealed emergency doors. Security teams split apart in confusion as rival mafia soldiers opened fire from multiple directions simultaneously. The elite gathering transformed into a massacre, and at the center of it stood Luca Moretti beside Isabella. For the first time since meeting him, Isabella saw Luca abandon emotional restraint completely. The calm billionaire mask disappeared. What remained terrified her. His movement became brutally efficient as he dragged Isabella behind a concrete support wall moments before bullets shattered the glass balcony behind them. Armed men stormed the rooftop from maintenance stairwells, while traitors inside Luca's organization turned weapons against their own allies. Nobody knew who still belonged to whom anymore. The Empire had finally begun eating itself alive. Below the rooftop, explosions echoed through lower floors as emergency alarms screamed throughout the building. Residents panicked inside apartments, while armed security forces rushed through hallways searching for enemies hidden among civilians. Children cried. Glass shattered endlessly. Smoke spread upward through ventilation systems. And somewhere beneath the chaos, the entire city watched the Moretti Empire collapse publicly in real time. National media outlets already broadcast leaked corruption files connected to politicians attending the rooftop gala. Secret financial records tied senators, judges, and wealthy investors to trafficking operations stretching across multiple states. The destruction was no longer private. It had become national. Meanwhile, Luca focused only on keeping Isabella alive. He moved her through service corridors connected to the rooftop, while gunfire erupted behind them continuously. Several guards remained loyal, but fear spread rapidly among surviving security teams after realizing the organization itself had been compromised from inside. Trust no longer existed, only survival. As they descended toward lower floors, Isabella witnessed scenes she could never erase emotionally. One hallway contained injured residents crawling through smoke, while sprinklers rained dirty water from collapsing ceilings. Armed men exchanged gunfire near elevators, while terrified families hid inside maintenance closets, desperately covering children's mouths to silence their crying. The apartment building no longer resembled a home. It resembled a war zone. And somehow, Lucas still moved through destruction with frightening control. That emotional contradiction haunted Isabella deeply, because the same man protecting terrified residents from armed attackers was also capable of terrifying brutality moments later. She witnessed it herself near the 32nd floor. A group of traitors cornered several surviving security guards beside a destroyed apartment entrance. Before Isabella fully understood what happened, Luca eliminated them with cold precision, while smoke drifted through shattered hallway lights. There was no hesitation inside him anymore, no visible mercy. Only violence sharpened by betrayal. Isabella realized and why powerful men across New York feared Luca Moretti more than law enforcement itself. He did not become dangerous when emotional. He became unstoppable. Yet beneath that brutality, something else disturbed her more. Every violent decision he made still prioritized protecting her first. That emotional loyalty weakened him even during chaos. And enemies understood it. As they moved deeper into the building, communication systems failed entirely. Emergency broadcasts echoed uselessly through damaged speakers, while residents attempted escaping through locked stairwells controlled remotely from security offices. Someone had trapped everyone inside intentionally. Then Isabella discovered the truth about Vanessa DeMarco. They found her inside a private executive lounge, several floors beneath the rooftop, surrounded by armed guards loyal to rival Mafia interests. Expensive artwork burned behind her, while television screens displayed national coverage, exposing Moretti-connected corruption publicly. Vanessa appeared disturbingly calm, because this was never just betrayal. It was ambition. For months, she manipulated political figures, rival organizations, and internal security teams against Luca quietly. She believed emotional attachment to Isabella weakened his authority enough to destroy him permanently. And now she intended finishing the collapse herself. The confrontation changed the atmosphere instantly. Luca's expression hardened with something deeper than anger, disappointment. Vanessa had once belonged to his closest inner circle. Now she openly sided with enemies hunting him. The emotional damage behind his silence unsettled Isabella more than shouting ever could. Gunfire erupted moments later, when Vanessa's guards opened fire first. The lounge transformed into chaos immediately. Furniture exploded beneath bullets, while burning curtains spread flames rapidly across walls and ceilings. Isabella barely escaped injury after Luca pulled her behind overturned marble tables during the firefight. Several innocent residents hiding nearby died in the crossfire before reaching safety. That reality shattered Isabella emotionally. Until then, part of her still believed this world operated separately from ordinary people. Now, innocent blood covered apartment floors because powerful criminals chose war over control. The emotional horror became unavoidable. After surviving the ambush, Luca forced remaining enemies backward through smoke-filled corridors, while Vanessa escaped deeper into the building beside rival guards. But before leaving, she revealed something devastating. Isabella's father had not disappeared accidentally years earlier. He discovered evidence exposing trafficking operations connected to powerful political families working alongside sections of the Moretti Empire. And someone inside Luca's organization ordered his elimination before he could release the information publicly. That truth destroyed Isabella internally. For years, she believed her father died because ordinary people disappeared unnoticed inside corrupt systems. Instead, he died because he tried fighting them. The emotional weight of that realization nearly broke her during the chaos surrounding them. But Luca revealed something even darker afterward. He already suspected the truth years earlier. That was why he purchased the apartment building specifically after discovering Isabella lived there, not merely to control her, to protect her before rival organizations discovered her connection to hidden evidence tied to her father's investigation. Suddenly, every strange interaction between them gained terrifying clarity. The surveillance, the protection, the emotional obsession. Luca never entered Isabella's life accidentally. He entered because her existence threatened the entire criminal network hidden beneath New York politics. That emotional revelation changed everything between them, yet there was no time processing it fully. Because the building itself was collapsing. Massive explosions erupted across lower maintenance floors after hidden gas lines ignited beneath damaged electrical systems. Entire sections of the tower shook violently, while smoke consumed upper hallways rapidly. Outside, federal raids finally surrounded Moretti-owned properties throughout New York simultaneously. Helicopters circled overhead. Police barricades blocked surrounding streets. News networks broadcast live footage nationwide, while terrified residents escaped through emergency exits under armed supervision. The empire was dying publicly, exactly as someone planned. And slowly Isabella realized Luca expected this outcome long before the rooftop gala began. Inside a hidden security office connected to maintenance tunnels, Isabella discovered encrypted files revealing Luca secretly leaked portions of his own financial network months earlier. He engineered parts of the collapse himself, not because he lost control, because he wanted to destroy the corruption consuming his empire permanently before rivals or politicians buried the truth forever. That intellectual realization shook Isabella emotionally. Luca Moretti was not simply fighting enemies anymore. He was sacrificing everything intentionally. His wealth, his empire, potentially his own survival. All to expose systems poisoning innocent lives for decades. And somehow Isabella became emotionally connected to the center of that destruction. Meanwhile, Damian Cross manipulated events from outside perfectly. Federal forces moved strategically only after rival organizations weakened each other internally. Damian publicly presented himself as the man dismantling organized crime nationwide, while secretly benefiting politically from every death and scandal unfolding inside the building. He never cared about justice, only power. That realization horrified Isabella deeply, because even after the empire collapsed, men like Damian would survive comfortably inside government systems pretending righteousness. Corruption simply changed uniforms. As fire spread higher throughout the tower, Luca guided Isabella and surviving residents toward underground evacuation routes beneath the building. Several loyal guards sacrificed themselves holding off armed attackers, while civilians escaped through maintenance tunnels connected to neighboring streets. The emotional devastation surrounding them intensified continuously. Smoke swallowed hallways. Bodies covered stairwells. Families screamed searching for missing relatives beneath emergency sirens and collapsing ceilings. And through all of it, Luca refused abandoning Isabella even once. That emotional loyalty finally broke something inside her, because despite everything terrifying about him, despite the violence and blood surrounding his empire, she understood one unbearable truth emotionally. Luca Moretti genuinely cared whether she survived. That realization became both comforting and tragic simultaneously. Then came the final betrayal. One of Luca's oldest security commanders intercepted them near underground parking levels while pretending loyalty. But moments later, hidden explosives detonated throughout surrounding support columns. The attack was designed specifically to trap Luca inside the collapsing structure. Gunfire erupted instantly. Luca shielded Isabella from the blast, while concrete ceilings crashed around them violently. Flames spread through underground tunnels, while surviving residents fled toward emergency exits desperately. The commander confessed seconds before dying that rival families and political elites wanted Luca buried beneath the destruction permanently, before more hidden evidence reached federal investigators. Dead men could not expose governments. The building shook again. Then another explosion tore through the underground levels. Luca realized immediately the entire structure would collapse soon. Without hesitation, he forced Isabella toward an evacuation corridor leading outside, while remaining behind temporarily to hold collapsing security doors open manually. She refused, leaving at first. Emotionally, fear and loyalty collided violently inside her, but Luca's expression remained strangely calm despite the inferno surrounding them. For the first time, Isabella saw exhaustion inside him stronger than violence, as though years of carrying power, guilt, revenge, and grief had finally become unbearable. Then he revealed one final truth. Her father died trying to prevent innocent families from becoming victims of the trafficking networks hidden inside the Moretti Empire, and Luca intended finishing what he started, even if it destroyed him too. Moments later, another explosion erupted nearby. The force threw Isabella through the evacuation corridor, while flames consumed the underground level behind her completely. The last thing she saw before emergency responders dragged her outside into the freezing Brooklyn night was Luca Moretti disappearing back into the burning building as the collapsing tower swallowed him beneath fire and smoke forever. Even after Luca Moretti vanished in the explosion, powerful men across America still whispered his name with fear. 3 months after the apartment tower collapse, New York still carried scars from the destruction. The burned remains of the building stood behind steel barricades like a grave nobody wanted to discuss publicly. City officials blamed electrical failures, organized crime conflicts, and federal investigations all at once, carefully avoiding deeper explanations during press conferences. But ordinary people across Brooklyn understood something darker had happened. Entire families disappeared after the fire. Politicians resigned unexpectedly. Federal agents vanished from investigations without explanation. And powerful businessmen suddenly transferred millions of dollars overseas before quietly leaving the country. The Moretti Empire may have fallen publicly, but its shadow still poisoned the city from beneath the surface. Meanwhile, Isabella Hayes tried rebuilding a normal life inside a city that no longer felt safe emotionally. She moved into a small apartment several neighborhoods away using government compensation funds connected to the disaster investigation. Her younger brother slowly recovered physically after months of medical treatment. Yet Isabella herself remained emotionally trapped inside the nightmare Luca Moretti left behind. Every loud sound reminded her of explosions. Every unfamiliar face triggered paranoia. Every black SUV passing nearby forced her heartbeat to accelerate uncontrollably. Trauma had rewired her entire existence. And the worst part was emotional conflict she could never escape internally. Part of her still feared Luca. Another part missed him. That contradiction haunted her constantly, especially during sleepless nights when memories of his final expression returned vividly through darkness and silence. The city declared him dead officially weeks earlier. No body had been recovered from the collapse. But nobody truly believed Luca Moretti died easily, not even his enemies. Across America, surviving Mafia factions fought violently for control of territories once connected to the Moretti Empire. Assassinations increased nationwide, while hidden financial networks collapsed publicly under federal pressure. Entire criminal organizations turned against one another, searching for missing assets, hidden vaults, and encrypted records Luca secretly controlled before the explosion. Chaos replaced structure. Fear replaced loyalty. And somewhere beneath the violence, rumors spread quietly. The Mafia king survived. Those whispers intensified after several rival leaders disappeared mysteriously within the same month. No witnesses, no evidence, only silence. The underworld interpreted that silence as a warning. Luca Moretti might still be watching. Meanwhile, Damian Cross transformed himself into a national political figure almost overnight. Television networks praise him endlessly for dismantling organized crime corruption tied to the Moretti empire. He appeared beside senators and federal officials promising justice, reform, and accountability while secretly expanding his own influence behind closed doors. The public viewed him as a hero. Isabella saw something far more dangerous because she understood one horrifying truth emotionally. Damian benefited from the empire's destruction more than anyone else alive. That realization made her deeply suspicious after strange things began happening around her again. At first, the signs appeared small. A man watching her apartment building repeatedly from parked vehicles. Unknown numbers calling late at night without speaking. Security cameras near her workplace suddenly malfunctioning whenever she arrived or left. Then came the coded messages. The first arrived hidden inside a newspaper delivered accidentally to her apartment door. At first glance, it looked meaningless. Random letters circled inside financial articles. But Isabella recognized the pattern immediately. Luca once showed her similar coded systems hidden inside apartment maintenance files months earlier. Someone wanted her attention, and whoever sent the message knew details impossible for strangers to understand. The code translated into a single sentence. Trust nobody connected to the investigation. Fear consumed her instantly, because only a handful of people knew enough about Luca's systems to create that message. And most of them were dead. Over the following weeks, additional clues appeared carefully. Encrypted bank account numbers hidden inside online articles. Subway station coordinates scratched beneath park benches. Old photographs mailed anonymously showing Isabella's father beside Luca's younger brother years before the murder investigation disappeared publicly. Someone guided her intentionally toward buried truths. At first, Isabella assumed Damian Cross orchestrated everything to manipulate her emotionally. But then she discovered something impossible. Several hidden financial records connected to the Moretti Empire resurfaced online through anonymous leaks exposing federal officials previously involved in anti-crime investigations themselves. The corruption extended far beyond organized crime. Judges, police commissioners, political advisors, federal contractors, entire sections of government quietly profited from trafficking operations hidden beneath real estate investments and urban development projects for decades. And Isabella's father tried exposing all of it before disappearing. That realization shattered the final illusions she still carried emotionally. Her father had not simply become collateral damage. He had been targeted systematically because he threatened people protected by law itself. Suddenly, Luca's obsession with protecting her gained terrifying clarity. He understood exactly how dangerous the truth surrounding her family really was. Meanwhile, paranoia consumed Isabella more aggressively each day. She noticed unfamiliar people following her subway routes repeatedly. Security cameras appeared near locations connected to leaked financial records before mysterious fires destroyed evidence hours later. Someone cleaned the corruption carefully, and someone else fought desperately to expose it. Caught between those invisible forces, Isabella no longer knew which side hunted her and which side protected her. That psychological uncertainty slowly destroyed her sense of reality. One night she returned home to find her apartment completely untouched physically, yet emotionally violated in subtle ways. Cabinet doors slightly open. Family photographs repositioned. A single black chess piece left beside her kitchen sink. Luca once described chess as the favorite symbol used by powerful criminals manipulating events from shadows. The message terrified her, because it meant someone entered her apartment not to harm her, to remind her they could. Fear followed her everywhere afterward. Yet despite the terror surrounding her life, another emotion slowly resurfaced stronger than expected. Hope, because deep inside, Isabella no longer believed Luca died in the fire. Too many details felt intentional. Too many coded systems remained active. Too many enemies still acted afraid. And then she uncovered the hidden survival strategy. Using information embedded inside encrypted financial records, Isabella traced a sequence of abandoned maintenance tunnels beneath Brooklyn connected to old subway infrastructure forgotten decades earlier. The tunnels linked several former Moretti properties secretly, including vault locations untouched by federal raids. Inside one abandoned underground storage site, Isabella discovered emergency supplies, cash reserves, weapons, and false identity documents prepared months before the apartment building attack. Luca planned for collapse long before the rooftop gala. Not escape, survival after destruction. That distinction changed everything emotionally because it proved he expected betrayal from inside his empire long before the fire consumed it. But the deeper Isabella investigated, the more dangerous her situation became. Several people connected to her father's old investigations died suddenly within weeks. One journalist vanished. A former accountant suffered a suspicious overdose. A retired judge involved in corruption hearings was found dead inside his vehicle beside the Hudson River. Someone eliminated loose ends rapidly, and Isabella realized she remained one of the final surviving connections to hidden evidence capable of exposing everyone involved. Fear and loneliness consumed her completely after that realization. There were moments she almost surrendered emotionally, moments she considered disappearing permanently under another identity far away from New York. But every time fear nearly won, she remembered the innocent residents who died inside the apartment building, the families destroyed, the children buried beneath corruption created by powerful men pretending morality publicly. If she disappeared, nothing truly changed. That emotional truth hardened her quietly. Weeks later, another coded message arrived through a damaged subway locker hidden beneath an abandoned station map. This time the message contained coordinates leading toward forgotten underground train tunnels beneath Manhattan. And attached beside the coordinates was a photograph. Luca Moretti standing beside Isabella's father years earlier, alive. Neither man appeared hostile. In fact, they looked united against something far more dangerous outside the camera frame. That image emotionally devastated Isabella, because it proved Luca and her father shared secrets neither ever revealed completely, perhaps even trust. Suddenly, the entire story she believed about Luca shifted again internally. Maybe he was never merely protecting her because of guilt. Maybe her father trusted him once. That possibility haunted her endlessly. Against every survival instinct, Isabella followed the coordinates alone 3 nights later. Rain covered the city while abandoned subway entrances disappeared beneath shadows and graffiti-covered barriers. Most people avoided those tunnels entirely after decades of closures connected to structural collapses and criminal activity underground. But Isabella continued descending anyway. The deeper she traveled beneath the city, the quieter the world became. No traffic, no sirens, only distant dripping water echoing through darkness. Eventually, she reached an abandoned underground station buried beneath layers of forgotten infrastructure. Rusted tracks vanished into black tunnels while broken emergency lights flickered weakly above collapsed platforms. And then she noticed movement inside the shadows. Her heartbeat stopped instantly. A tall figure stood near the far end of the underground platform, partially hidden beneath darkness and dust-covered pillars, still watching her silently. At first, Isabella thought trauma finally broke her perception completely. But then the figure stepped forward slightly beneath the dim emergency lights. The sharp suit, the controlled posture, the terrifying calm presence she could never forget emotionally. Luca Moretti stood alive inside the shadows of the abandoned underground station. The final time Luca reached for Isabella's hand happened moments before the entire empire collapsed forever. The abandoned underground station felt less like a hiding place and more like the grave of a dying kingdom. Rust-covered subway tracks disappeared into endless darkness, while water dripped steadily from broken concrete ceilings above. Emergency lights flickered weakly across the ruined platform, casting unstable shadows against the walls like ghosts trapped beneath New York City itself. And standing inside those shadows was Luca Moretti, alive. For several seconds, Isabella could not move emotionally. Every nightmare, every memory, every unanswered question collided violently inside her chest at once. Part of her wanted to run toward him. Another part still remembered the blood, the fear, the destruction that followed his name everywhere. But Luca looked different now. Not weaker, not broken, just exhausted in a way powerful men rarely allowed themselves to become. The ruthless control that once defined him seemed cracked beneath months of betrayal, violence, and survival. Even his silence carried emotional weight now instead of intimidation. And for the first time since meeting him, Isabella noticed something terrifying. Luca Moretti no longer looked like a man fighting to save an empire. He looked like a man preparing to end one forever. Behind him, hidden inside the abandoned station, dozens of computer servers blinked beneath emergency generators. Stolen financial records, encrypted government files, trafficking evidence, political blackmail archives, and secret offshore accounts filled the underground vault surrounding them. Enough information to destroy half the country's political elite. Enough evidence to collapse criminal networks operating for decades beneath government protection. That was Luca's true final weapon. Not violence. Truth. Isabella slowly stepped closer, while fear and emotion battled silently inside her mind. The station felt emotionally heavy, as if every secret buried beneath the city had gathered there waiting for judgment. Then she saw the photographs spread across a nearby steel table. Pictures of senators, judges, federal investigators, business executives, and beside many of them stood her father. At first the sight shattered her emotionally, but then she noticed something else. Her father was never positioned like an ally. He looked frightened in nearly every image. Watching, observing, collecting evidence. Suddenly years of confusion collapsed into horrifying clarity. Her father had spent years secretly helping Luca's younger brother expose corruption tied to trafficking operations hidden beneath real estate developments across New York. The apartment building, the missing tenants, the financial laundering systems, the political protection, all of it connected together through a network so powerful that law enforcement itself became part of the machine protecting it. And when Luca's younger brother threatened exposing the truth publicly, someone inside the empire ordered his execution. The same people later silenced Isabella's father permanently. Luca finally revealed the truth that haunted him for years emotionally. He never bought the apartment building because he wanted control over Isabella. He bought it because he believed the same people who murdered his brother were now hunting her too. Protecting her became an obsession born from guilt, revenge, and unfinished loyalty toward her father. That emotional truth changed everything inside Isabella. For months she believed Luca represented the danger destroying her life. Now she understood something far worse. The real monsters wore expensive suits inside government offices, while men like Luca became weapons created by the corruption itself. And suddenly the line between criminal and protector no longer looked clear. Before Isabella could process the emotional weight fully, alarms suddenly echoed through the underground station. Sharp, violent, urgent. Luca's expression darkened instantly. Someone found them. Security monitors across the station activated simultaneously, revealing armed federal teams descending into nearby subway tunnels while black armored vehicles blocked underground access points across the city. But Isabella noticed something even worse emotionally. Damian Cross stood beside the federal commanders, smiling calmly. He had never intended to destroy corruption. He intended to inherit it. The political chaos after the Moretti Empire's collapse gave Damian unprecedented influence across federal agencies, media systems, and financial investigations. He manipulated both organized crime and law enforcement simultaneously until he positioned himself above both worlds. And now he wanted the evidence hidden beneath the station erased permanently. Alongside him appeared another familiar face, Vanessa DeMarco, alive after disappearing during the apartment attack months earlier. The sight emotionally stunned Isabella. Vanessa had secretly aligned herself with Damien long before the building explosion. Every manipulation, betrayal, and assassination attempt traced back toward their alliance together. They never feared Luca emotionally. They feared what he knew. Within minutes, the underground station transformed into a battlefield. Gunfire echoed violently through subway tunnels, while explosions shook the concrete foundations beneath Manhattan itself. Armed Moretti loyalists emerged from hidden passageways defending server rooms, while federal tactical teams advanced deeper underground. Chaos consumed everything. Smoke spread across the tracks. Emergency lights failed repeatedly. Screams disappeared beneath collapsing steel and gunfire. And through all of it, Luca protected Isabella relentlessly, not like a mafia king protecting property, like a man desperately trying to save the final piece of humanity left inside himself. That emotional difference shattered Isabella internally, because for the first time she saw the real Luca completely. Not the feared billionaire, not the ruthless criminal king, just a damaged man, consumed by revenge for so long that he nearly became identical to the people he hated. And he finally understood it too. The deeper the battle spread underground, the more the hidden corruption network collapsed publicly above the city. Luca activated encrypted data, releases connected to news organizations' worldwide moments before the federal assault began. Suddenly, confidential trafficking records flooded media networks internationally. Political bribery payments surfaced online. Secret surveillance operations tied to government officials leaked publicly. Entire financial systems connected to organized crime collapsed within hours. Across America, arrests began immediately. Powerful corporations froze operations overnight. Senators disappeared from public view. Judges resigned. Federal agencies turned against one another, trying to survive exposure. The empire protecting corruption for generations finally began burning from inside. And at the center of that destruction stood Luca Moretti, not protecting power anymore, destroying it. But Damian Cross refused to lose control quietly. Inside the collapsing station, he confronted Luca personally near the central server vault while fire spread through broken fuel lines beneath the tunnels. The emotional atmosphere felt almost biblical. Two men shaped by corruption standing inside the ruins of the same rotten system that created them both. Damian still believed power justified everything. Luca no longer did. That difference changed the outcome completely. The confrontation turned brutally violent as subway tunnels collapsed around them. Vanessa attempted escaping with encrypted backup drives containing hidden financial records capable of rebuilding the corruption network later. But Isabella stopped her. Months earlier, Isabella would have frozen emotionally under fear and manipulation. Now she understood survival required confronting monsters directly. Vanessa attacked desperately, while flames consumed the station behind them. Yet years of emotional abuse and fear no longer controlled Isabella internally. She fought back, not for revenge, for freedom. During the struggle, Vanessa fell beneath collapsing debris near the burning tracks, while emergency alarms screamed to the tunnels endlessly. Meanwhile, Damian Cross finally revealed the ugliest truth emotionally. He admitted her father begged Luca's brother to stop investigating years earlier because the corruption reached too high inside government systems. But once the investigation started exposing trafficking victims connected to elite politicians, escape became impossible. Her father tried protecting both families. The system murdered him for it anyway. That confession emotionally destroyed Isabella. Yet strangely, it also freed her. For years, grief controlled her identity. Now the truth finally replaced uncertainty. Her father died trying to stop evil instead of serving it. And Luca's brother died beside him fighting the same war. The realization emotionally connected their lives forever beneath the destruction surrounding them. As the station continued collapsing, Luca finally made his decision. The remaining backup servers hidden underground could still allow surviving corruption networks to rebuild later if recovered. Someone had to stay behind and destroy everything completely, including themselves if necessary. At first, Isabella refused emotionally, but Luca understood something she did not yet fully accept. Men like him rarely escape the worlds they created alive. The violence attached to his name would haunt her forever unless the empire truly ended with him. For the first time in his life, Luca chose sacrifice over control, and that choice transformed him more than power ever could. The burning station mirrored the apartment building where their story began emotionally. Both places once represented prisons controlled by fear, surveillance, and manipulation. Now both collapsed beneath truth and destruction. Luca stepped closer through smoke and falling debris, while emergency sirens echoed closer above them. Federal forces surrounded the underground access points completely now. Time was disappearing rapidly. And then came the final emotional moment Isabella would remember forever. Luca reached for her hand quietly through the smoke, not demanding loyalty, not asking forgiveness, simply trying to protect her one last time. For months, Isabella feared him emotionally, then hated him, then slowly understood him. Now, standing inside the burning ruins of an empire built on pain, she finally saw the man beneath the monster completely. A man destroyed by grief long before she ever met him. A man who became dangerous because the world around him rewarded brutality more than mercy. A man who still chose protecting her over saving himself in the end. That realization broke something inside Isabella emotionally, not weakness. Fear. For the first time in years, fear no longer controlled her decisions. Tears filled her eyes as Luca guided her toward an emergency tunnel leading upward through collapsing subway maintenance routes. Around them, flames consumed servers containing decades of hidden corruption, while explosions buried evidence beneath tons of concrete and steel forever. The empire was dying, but the system beneath it would never disappear entirely. Even Luca understood that truth. Corruption simply changed faces over time. New monsters always replaced old ones. Still, destroying this empire mattered, because survivors deserved proof that powerful people could fall too. As Isabella climbed toward the surface through smoke-filled tunnels, the final explosion shook the underground station violently beneath Manhattan. Fire erupted upward through broken subway vents, while emergency crews flooded the streets above. The city watched chaos unfold live across every news network in America. And somewhere beneath the burning ruins, Luca Moretti disappeared forever. Or, so the world believed. Hours later, federal agents searched the destroyed underground station carefully. Bodies were recovered, weapons cataloged, evidence buried beneath rubble. But despite the destruction, investigators discovered something deeply unsettling. Luca Moretti's body was never recovered from ruins.